In the quaint coastal town of Wicker Bay, folklore was as much a part of the landscape as the craggy cliffs that embraced the churning sea. The tales spun by the hearth were of shapeshifters and shadows, of spirits that whispered through the fog. But there was one legend that local children dared not speak of: the legend of the Marrow Man. The story went that every century the Marrow Man would rise from the depths of the earth to trade his decaying form for fresh flesh, seeping into the bones of the living, warping their bodies to his will. It was a tale meant to scare children into obedience, a tale that kept the nights in Wicker Bay echoing with the unspoken dread of what lurked beneath. Dr. Julian Crane, a noted pathologist, arrived in Wicker Bay on the eve of the new century. His expertise in rare bone diseases had brought him to the town's hospital, a facility that dated back to the days when the legend first began. Julian was a man of science, unswayed by superstition. His curiosity piqued by the inexplicable increase in bone maladies that seemed to plague the town as the century turned. It began with a single patient, a fisherman whose bones had twisted overnight into an almost helical form, his screams echoing through the hospital walls as if something within him clawed to break free. Julian examined the marrow under a microscope, expecting disease, but found something far more disturbing: a pulsating blackness where blood cells should have been. As days passed, more townsfolk filled the hospital beds, their bodies contorted, their bones morphing into grotesque sculptures of flesh and sinew. The whispers of the Marrow Man slithered through the wards, and Julian could not ignore the terror that followed them. Julian's skepticism crumbled when he found the old texts in the hospital library, a hidden section filled with ancient medical accounts of the town's centennial curse. The illustrations in the margins showed the Marrow Man, a skeletal creature with an insatiable hunger for the living essence found within bones. Driven by a maddening need to understand, Julian worked tirelessly, his own body beginning to ache as he pored over his research. One night, as a tempest raged outside, the ground beneath the hospital quivered. Julian, alone in the library, watched in horror as the pages of his text began to turn on their own, stopping on an incantation, a supposed ward against the Marrow Man. He heard a sound then, like the grinding of earth. A figure stood in the doorway, a shadow sown from darkness, its eyes two burning coals of malice. Julian felt a coldness seep into his bones, and the figure spoke in a voice like the shifting of tectonic plates. "You seek understanding, Doctor?" it hissed. "Understand this. Some knowledge is a parasite gnawing at the foundations of your reality until it collapses." Julian felt a deep pain in his marrow, an invasion of his very essence. He stumbled backward, clutching his arms as they began to twist. He cried out, not in pain, but in epiphany. The creature advanced, its movements a mockery of human grace. The Marrow Man reached out, its touch like a brand, and Julian saw the centuries of metamorphosis, saw the creature's existence bound to the ebb and flow of life and death, saw himself as but a moment in the grand tapestry of its being. But Julian was not just a man of science. He was a man of action. With a strength born of desperation, he uttered the incantation, the words cutting through the air like a scalpel through flesh. The Marrow Man recoiled, its form dissolving into the earth that birthed it. The storm broke, the sun rose, and the afflicted in the hospital began to recover, their bones settling back into human form. Julian, however, was never the same. His body bore the marks of the Marrow Man's touch, his skin marbled with patterns that pulsed with an eldritch light. He left Wicker Bay soon after, his research incomplete, his questions unanswered. But the legend of the Marrow Man now carried a new chapter, a chapter of a doctor whose bones held the secret of the century's curse, who walked the earth with the knowledge of the metamorphosis in the marrow. And as the century wanes, the children of Wicker Bay whisper new tales of the man whose silhouette is twisted against the moonlight, whose eyes hold the depths of the earth, wandering in search of the truth that eluded him, a truth that lies buried in the marrow.